there used to be a whole type of class that you would see at colleges and universities, even high schools, where they'd bring in extremists from all sides. They'd bring in the Holocaust denier, they'd bring in the Klans person, they'd bring in the Black Panther. And the purpose was to kind of expose students to it and to argue with these people. But
that's why you know the name of Nazis from this time. There was a guy named Tom Metzger who was a complete psychopath, and he would show up on television shows, and he was the wrestling villain. He'd be booed, and it would be shown very quickly to be a very, very silly person who knew next to nothing. And people, their lived experience, they could compare to the things that this person was saying, which is dystopian nightmare that didn't exist. But the problem is, of course, that nobody still wants to say that I don't like speech. I don't like free speech. But it's much easier, obviously, to say that I don't like violence. And if speech is violence, you're going to say that you're I'm opposed to violence, my friend. I'm opposed to trauma being inflicted upon people. Who doesn't like that? I mean, like you said about DEI, who doesn't like diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, that Orwellian thing where you start defining things in North Korea, who doesn't like the Democratic People's Republic of Korea? Those are 3 words that precede Korea, all of which I think are pretty good. And then you do it in this way. You say, well, this is what this means. I mean, we haven't, I don't think, paid enough attention to, I mean, Greg, your boss, who wrote a fantastic book about this with John Haidt, has, but we haven't paid enough attention to swatting down this idea that words are violence and harmful. And, you know, if we're going to talk about Twitter in a bit, I'll tell you that the Twitter thing is that there are people that I talk to now that can't imagine. They're like, I saw this thing on Twitter the other day. I can't believe they're not even getting banned. Well, you know, my friend, 8 years ago, no one even thought that. There would just be crazy people. There'd be Alex Jones, and you would ignore them or you'd make fun of them and they would go away. But the actual exposure to these ideas is like being exposed to radiation, they think. It's just going to get into your system and you can't.
Yeah, and the corollary to this is the idea that impact matters more than intention, you know, and that totally, this dogma of impact outweighing intention is becoming, it's in one of the student uh, statements, not the student, but I think another student made a statement in the student newspaper saying, our institution at Hamlin, we are taught that impact matters more than intention. I mean, I'd like to give Hamlin the benefit of the doubt and my colleagues out there to think that this is not what they're teaching, but clearly the students are hearing this message. And that is very disturbing because you've kind of just, it's not, then it's no longer debatable because then you just have to trust someone for what the impact of something is and you can't even question them and you can't
It allows you to say that Mark Twain is no different than the Turner Diaries because they both include words that are racially, that are, you know, racial slurs and inappropriate. Context does matter.